It is the second model introduced in the 2026 ZOIDS Genesis collaboration with Medarot S, sporting the likeness of the iconic Raptor of the series. This is ZGS01 BM Raptor, with a completely new kit across the board of Shock Fire, Guard Claw, Lock Claw, biped legs, and a brand new leg ability of Element Coat, which reduces gunpowder, gravity, and optic damage to 10% of its intended damage dealt, but in trade, you take triple damage from everything else. Now, at the time of recording, we actually have seen BM Raptor in-game as an enemy-only NPC, and was able to kind of already gauge how he behaves overall. But with the numbers officially in front of us now, I can definitely look for a fact and see that, unfortunately, while his kit on paper actually sounds pretty nasty, in execution, he may end up turning himself more into a liability than an asset on most teams he's put on. Shock Fire on the head part is a brand new skill being introduced into the game, which is a shooting skill that always crits no matter what if the attack lands. Additionally, it also inflicts a fire DOT on the enemy in question. This will put it in the same vein as Van Kerbat and his Shockwave attack. So essentially, kind of rolling out a new wave of sure crit attacks that have an extra added effect just to make the attack sting a little bit more. While the fire DOT may not do too much overall, you still can't sneeze at the fact that having over 2200 base power before the crit even lands means it's going to be absurdly painful no matter which way you look at it. And even if he only has one shot, he is still fairly solid in all other specs, with a success of over 1000 and his heating and cooling between low 600s to high 600s, so no real problem there as far as getting to and from the line. Guard Claw on the right arm is another brand new skill that has a rather interesting condition to it. As a claw attack, it is a scatter attribute, which means it'll damage one part normally and then two others randomly for extra damage, but if the attack lands, as an added perk, it will boost the user's resist stats by 50% for until one action is taken. So this kind of puts it in the same vein as, say, like Spot Blow and Attack Blow from Enkiju and the Gurren Lagann collab, where if the attack lands, it gives you a perk. And I will admit, even for what it offers, that extra 50% to resist stats means until that next action is taken, it'll be a lot harder to break the user, with that boosted resist being able to keep the damage even lower than it was before, especially given that it also stacks with basically everything else on the board. It is also worth noting, with both heating and cooling in the high 600s, you can fire this sucker off with really no problem or detriment when it comes to speed, and trying to outrun BM Raptor in this regard might be a little bit more of a challenge than you might let on. Lock Claw on the other arm, and the other brand new skill that BM Raptor is introducing, is a little simpler as far as what it brings to the table. It is another scatter type move, much like Guard Claw, so one attack intended and then two others randomly for more damage, but it will also inflict a lock status on the enemy, which means they cannot dodge or defend while the negative symptom is in place. This guarantees that every single attack is not only guaranteed to land no matter what, but it's also guaranteed to be a critical hit, period. Essentially, it's one step just below Deathlock, and the only difference is Deathlock also inflicts a heating and cooling debuff, much like Wave and Hold does. But being able to guarantee hits and crits like this, I really wouldn't complain too much of what that does bring to the table. Biped legs means that BM Raptor will have decent coverage on all terrains and fairly solid terrain compatibility at that, and its leg stats are actually not too shabby either. With a leg mobility of 859, he's already off to a fairly solid start in the speed department, and evade of 797 means he definitely will not be dodging or grazing too heavily compared to most other models, essentially kind of if he feels like it more than anything consistent. But he does have a rather impressive melee resist of 2007 and a shoot resist of 1586, so both of those numbers are actually really solid overall as far as what the base numbers on the paper are concerned. However, it is also worth noting that this is not taking the new ability of Element Coat into account, which reduces the attributes of gunpowder, gravity, and optic damage to 10% of its damage dealt, which is fantastic if you are taking on anything that uses any of those attributes. But in all other situations, basic rifle, basic sword, fire, melt, fire shot, whatever the case may be, that is not aligned with any of those three attributes, that triple damage is going to be excruciatingly painful if you do not have somebody covering BM Raptor at basically all times. In the armor department too, he's deceptively bulky, as it was made apparent with his legs as well, with a head armor of just under 4,800, arms at 4,019 apiece, and legs also just barely 4,800, means that this biomechanical Raptor is a little bit tankier as far as the numbers are concerned, and as long as he can keep that damage as low as possible. All this being said though, as a pure set score, as disappointing as it is, I have to rate BM Raptor a very low 4.5 out of 10. While on paper he does sound very nasty with what he brings to the table, between the conditional boost to his resist with a very easy condition to meet, Lock Claw being able to guarantee all hits land and crit, and even just one shot of shock fire with how painful it can be right at start, I still can't really overlook it with what the leg ability of Element Coat brings. Well, like I said, it is fantastic if you're taking on anything that's a WEA type, Beastmaster, God Emperor, whatever, or anyone else that deals with an attribute style damage. Unfortunately, that leg ability ends up turning BM Raptor into more of a liability than he is an asset on any team he's on. Because if he comes up against anything using, say, Max Shot as a great example, or Revenge Sword, or even Basic Sword and Basic Rifle at that, it's going to cripple him a whole lot faster and a whole lot easier before he even gets the chance to move. So unfortunately, you really will not see BM Raptor, or at least with these legs, anywhere close to anything in competitive meta, because it's just that much of a liability. But in the few instances where it is good, you can still put it to fairly solid use to keep that damage low. As mixed parts, I do have to rate him a little bit higher at a 5 out of 10. Given that Shockfire is extremely powerful, the fact that it only has one charge means after you use it, it's just kind of there, and you've kind of down apart for the rest of the fight. But if you can kill them fast enough, that problem solves itself. Guard Claw and Lock Claw, however, may have some fairly solid conditional uses on most teams as filler parts. Guard Claw possibly if you need something to bolster your resist stats for your next turn. Lock Claw if you need to guarantee anything to land and crit. But unfortunately, the leg ability of Element Coat, while it is accurate to the source material with what Biomega Raptor is, unfortunately, it definitely does not translate very well into Meta S and the kind of competitive that BM Raptor will be looking at once he officially drops.